Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of HR Hustle and Hijinks. Today we have Sarah May.
Hello.
For those who don't know Sarah May runs Mayday HR. Not a space in the middle though.
And not a capital D.
Not a capital D.
In the middle either.
So what we're going to do today is, this episode is called HR Horrors. So we're going to go through some of the absolutely horrific things that you have experienced in HR, but they have been censored a bit because Sarah has had some absolutely horrific HR stories.
Basically, I made a list and Amy vetoed most of them.
The problem is that when you are in HR for too long, you get desensitized and you're very jaded to the human race. So I think that we maybe sometimes forget what's maybe just not funny anymore.
Yes, but also that's why you can tell us anything, because we really have seen it all before.
We have. So Sarah's made a list. We have edited the list slightly. But she has put some titles on them. So before we start on the titles of your HR horrors, might you tell us a bit about you and what you do?
Do you know what was going on in my head there was I must make sure Amy doesn't finish this podcast before I can tell the poo story as well.
What? That was not on the list.
I know, but I'm telling you it now so that the audience are going to expect it, so I can tell the poo story.
That is so sneaky.
So, about me.
Go on.
So Sarah May, Mayday HR. Mayday HR is a HR consultancy that specialises in helping businesses with their HR emergencies, all their dramas. It's basically all the stuff you don't like.
Yep.
So I basically offer an HR emergency service, but I much prefer helping people prevent that from happening in the first place. So I spend most of my time dealing with things that nobody else likes dealing with. So any kind of dismissal. I love a dismissal because you can do it properly. Because I've had people that I've made redundant and they come up to me at the end and they shake my hand and they say, thank you very much. Like, there is something pleasurable about doing something right, because it's a really serious thing in people's lives. Like, you've got to give them the respect to do it right. So anyway, any kind of dismissal, grievance, dealing with someone on long-term sick, performance management is the most popular one, frequently asked questions. So I tend to support businesses with that, but I'd much prefer helping them prevent that in the first place. So that's good processes, good training. So I deliver training for line managers and business owners, because people don't know what they don't know, right? They start a business because they're good at a thing. People get promoted as a manager because they're good at their thing, their day job, but often it's not, you're an excellent leader of people, let me promote you.
Yeah,
it's
you're great at passing probation.
Yeah.
You're great at passing probations.
It'll be, oh, you're great at managing a restaurant, so I'll promote you, or you're great at painting, so I'll put you in charge of the other painters. Right. Yeah. But actually it's not, you're great at leading those other painters, so let me put you in charge of them. But also for business owners, it's not the one thing they think. If you think about starting a business, right, you've got to learn about sales, marketing, business development, finance, but you've also got to learn about HR, and there's an awful lot of liability there. So I spend a lot of time teaching people basically what they need to know in a non-fluffy way.
Would you say that managers are usually the main culprits for things going awry?
Yes. As opposed to who, though?
Well, I think where I'm getting to with this is that usually everything begins and ends with the quality of your management.
Yes. The only caveat I would say to that is they are the main culprits so long as the culture's right from the top. If you've got a dodgy person at the top, there's no hope.
Yeah.
I've even delivered training for like a cohort of managers, and on the feedback form they were like, our MD needs this training, because the MD didn't come on the training, right? And so actually there's no point training them all on something if the MD's not going to do it. But in the main, yes, there's a stat, I think, that 2/3 of managers are never given any training. And there's also a saying, isn't there? People don't leave their jobs, they leave their managers. So if you're a bad manager, either because you've made people feel bad or because you don't have the skills to be able to get the best out of somebody, absolutely. And my most frequently asked question is around performance management. But most of the time they should never, how the story goes is people start, they're not given any training, no onboarding, no induction, and then they're left to get on with it. They then pass the probation by default because the manager's too busy to deal with it. Come a year, they actually then say, oh, this person's underperforming. The employee feels gaslit because they're like, well, I've been performing the same way I always have. They then want to deal with it and they don't know how to. And I get there and go, how did this happen? And it's all because there weren't things beforehand.
I think also that as you know, I work with smaller businesses that sometimes in terms of like their actual role when people start, it's not really clear what people are going to be doing. So they allow some space for it to kind of grow and be more organic in terms of what they pick up. But I think what I've noticed, particularly with hiring people at entry level now, so it's sort of people coming into work, they just actually want some clear expectations.
Yes.
So you do A, B, C, and the rest of it can still be flexible.
I think there's two things to say. Like, I've started jobs where they've gone, it's a new role, Sarah, you make up your job description. And at a particular level, that's quite empowering. That can be good.
Yeah.
But you're right, at entry level, you have to be clear with them about what good looks like. And the way I word it to anyone I'm teaching is, if you got run over by a bus tomorrow and I had to come in and do that probationary review, I should be able to objectively look at that and be able to tell whether that person's performing well or not because of what you said.
But wait, what kind of bus?
The bus that's coming to run them over and kick them out the...
Is it a double decker then?
Oh, it'll be a double decker.
What about a bendy bus? I love when I go to Malta and there's a bendy bus. Where else do you see a bendy bus?
In London.
Shut up.
There's bendy buses in London.
I've not seen a bendy bus in London. What are you talking about?
We saw a bendy bus together when we were in London.
We did not.
Bendy buses in London.
You're lying.
You don't need to go to Malta.
Anyway. I didn't see a bendy bus. You're lying. That's
a bendy bus might not... But anyway,
a bendy bus doesn't have enough gumption to take down a manager, I don't think.
Well, not driving in London, no.
No.
But anyway, people should see the bus coming.
Okay.
Earlier, is that why you asked me about the bus?
People should know. It just was in my mind.
Oh, because I was thinking about seeing the bus coming, but I didn't think I'd said it.
I hadn't mentioned a bus.
Oh, that was the thing I was about to say.
You hadn't mentioned a bus.
That was the thing I was about to say. So there's two things about it. One is that people need to know what good looks like. Yeah. It's really weird. You read my mind. People need to know what good looks like.
Yeah.
And that needs to be objective, not just you need to be better.
Yes.
But the other thing I say about probation is people should see the bus coming. That was literally what I was about to say, which is why when you started talking about buses, I thought, had I just said that about buses and I'd forgotten?
No, I'm still stuck on that there are bendy buses in London.
But why did you start talking about buses?
Because I was thinking, what kind of a bus could actually, in being really serious, like what kind of a bus could take down somebody enough that they would need more than like a couple of days off work?
I don't know why you started talking about buses.
I don't know either. So moving swiftly on.
I think you read my mind about what I was about to say.
Trust me, do not give me that level of competency. I did not.
But anyway, you get my point.
You should see the bus coming.
People should see the bus coming.
Did you know that red cars are the most, it's the top colour in accidents? Did you know that? People don't see red. So that's why buses really probably shouldn't be red.
They're not in Brighton.
They are in London where they're bendy.
Yeah.
Anyway, what colour are they in Brighton?
Like a blue and green.
They sound shit.
They come every 10 minutes though.
You gotta stop. Oh, like buses. So we've got a list here of some things. What one would you like to start with? I feel like there was. Do we pick one at random?
You can pick a one. So basically, I'm just sharing with the audience these horror stories that were terrible at the time, but now make for quite funny stories.
Okay, let's start with the chlamydia queue. Let me introduce it properly. Sarah is here to talk about her awful experience with the chlamydia queue.
So prior to me starting Mayday HR, my background is I worked in hotels for 25 years.
Horrific in itself.
Actually, I loved it until I got to my mid-30s when I was like, oh my God, my body can't do this forever. I need a new job. That's when I went into HR.
Food.
I had 5 scones in one day once.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, so I used to work at I was HR manager at a 5-star hotel, and we had staff accommodation.
Oh.
And we had 2 massive staff houses.
We know where this is going.
2 massive staff houses with probably about 60 beds in total. Like, And no word of a lie, the pastoral care that I had to do was off the charts. I literally felt like a mother to 60 people. And between May and September, we had it was a summer season, it was a seaside hotel. So we had students that came over from France, Holland, Germany, everywhere, all on placements, first time away from home, all sharing rooms in staff accommodation.
Sounds like a really bad uni.
Yeah. And so I was used to a certain degree of first time away from home, drink, drugs, even getting arrested from time to time. I was used to that. Like that kind of thing happened. Someone didn't turn up for their shift, and they weren't answering their phone. It's because they were in the police cell. Like that happened. So I was kind of used to all of that. And then one day I had a lady come in, and she basically said to me, "Oh, Sarah," blah, blah, blah. And long story short, because I can't remember the details, she'd got chlamydia or suspected chlamydia, and so she wanted to know what to do. So I was like, "Oh yes, sexual health clinic."
Because you're obviously a GP as well.
Yes, because I'm obviously a GP. Yeah, and so off she went. About an hour later, another one comes.
No.
And I think there must have been 5 or 6 throughout the course of the day that came.
How?
Because they'd all been shagging each other.
Oh, was it the fizzy wee? How did they know?
Oh, how did they know? Oh.
Yeah, I got that. I don't think they were cuddling koalas in their spare time at the zoo.
I don't know. I didn't ask the ins and outs, but I sent them. In the end, I'd gone down to the sexual health clinic and got the posters. And then forevermore, there were posters up in the and also all the free condoms. I encouraged them to go and get the free condoms because. Anyway, so yeah, that was the chlamydia outbreak.
I'm surprised you didn't get some of them. You know, they're just in those little packs, aren't they? And you could have just had, a drawer of them and then just been like, oh yeah, don't worry, I've got you a pack.
Yeah, my pastoral care didn't go that far.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty horrific.
But anyway, so I call it the chlamydia queue because in one day I literally had 6 of them at my door saying, "What do we do?"
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah. That's the chlamydia queue. Chlamydia queue.
The chlamydia queue.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that was as revolting as I thought it would be. Good. Right. I quite like the bear bun, the eggs, and the break.
This is my favourite story.
This reminds me of what is it? Green Ham and Eggs, by Dr. Zeus. And it's just like a bunch of words all put together, and you're like, how is this all gonna?
So this is my favourite story. So the bear bum, the eggs, and the break-in. So it was Good Friday. I remember it because I wasn't at work actually.
Well, the eggs. You would hope that they
weren't chocolate. Eggs. They weren't chocolate eggs though. They were normal eggs. Sorry. Anyway, it was Good Friday. I took a call at home, and basically what had happened was 2 chefs, the commis chef and the sous chef. So for anyone who doesn't know, commis chef is like the entry level chef. Sous chef is one under a head chef, quite senior. And these 2 chefs had gone into the walk-in fridge,
right,
pulled down their trousers and their pants,
okay,
and basically took a selfie of their bare bum next to the eggs and posted it on Facebook.
Why?
And tagged where they were.
But why is that? I don't get it. Why would you want your bum next to eggs? Was it some sort of funny joke?
Don't know. Anyway, this was sort of over 10 years ago, and now I wouldn't necessarily suspend them, but we did suspend them at the time, because if they were doing that with the eggs, what were they doing with the butter when they went in the fridge, right? So there's kind of like a
vegetable is safe.
Yeah, so you like, so there's a bit of a risk of what else they can do, right? So they were suspended. Good Friday, they were suspended, and I wasn't going to be seeing them until I went back to work on the Tuesday. They were suspended.
Nice long bank holiday weekend for yourself, Shaz. Congrats.
And the chefs, because they were now 2 down, right?
Yeah.
Because they had to be suspended.
Mad.
Yeah. Anyway, fast forward Easter Monday, another call.
Oh dear.
So what had happened was,
I know,
the hotel was backed on, at the back of the hotel, there was a halfway house.
Okay.
And so the police often did patrols around there because there was quite a lot of crime and things. And so the police often did drive-bys. And one night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, the police drove by and saw this man shimmying up the drain pipe. So they went into the front of the hotel and said to the night manager, quick, you're being broken into, we've got to find the thief. So they were running around the corridors trying to work out how this guy, what window he'd got in. They eventually found him giggling in a 3rd floor cupboard. And it was the commis chef from Good Friday. So
why is he giggling?
First, he was drunk. Right, so he was off his face, drunk, And for some unknown reason, he shimmied up the drain pipe, broke in.
Right.
And what we discovered afterwards was the alcohol from the chef's office had disappeared, which he claimed he knew nothing about. Anyway, in his investigation and subsequent disciplinary, his defence was, I was worried I was going to get sacked for the Facebook post about the eggs.
Yeah.
So I was breaking in to retrieve my knives because I thought I'd get sacked and I wouldn't be able to get my knives.
Okay, that doesn't sound suspicious at all.
No. He got the sack.
Yeah. Did he get his knives?
He got his knives.
Thank goodness.
And he got the sack. So that's my favourite story because it's basically a calamity of everything that could possibly happen.
One question which I think anyone listening would be thinking.
Yeah. Did
you, as part of your investigation, need to check their bare bums to make sure that they were the ones on Facebook?
No.
The suspect A, the suspect B. Horrifying. Right, let's keep going down the list. So, I've heard this one. I don't know whether I can even start there. I think.
You want to hear about the pervert?
How did you know? No, can we?
You want to save that one, the pervert?
I just think the pervert night manager caught out is just like, it's so horrifying that it actually like makes you think about when you're away.
Okay. Well, I've got an add-on to that story as well because I forgot to tell you about the porn rental business as well. So that's an add-on to that story.
You've managed to make it a sequel.
Yeah, the sequel.
Go on then. We'll start with the pervert night manager caught out. Dun dun dun.
So this was back actually before I worked in HR, but it was the first person I'd ever had to suspend. So that's why it's relevant to my.
You always remember your first.
You always remember your first person you have to suspend. So, I used to work on front desk in hotels, and over the years, there'd always been people checking out on a Sunday saying, "Oh, we thought there was someone outside our room," and "Oh, I thought I heard someone outside." Over the years, but it never really took. There was never anything else, so we kind of didn't take any notice of it. Anyway, and then one night, and I'm going to name him Keith because if Keith ever listens to this podcast, he'll be dead chuffed that I've named him. He's not the pervert, by the way.
Okay.
Anyway, Keith was working on reception one night, and a guest comes down and says, "Quick! There was someone outside my window while me and my wife were having sex. Quick!
Wait,
terrible." Ground floor, yeah.
Okay, because we've had a story previously about somebody going up the drain pipe, so I want to make sure.
No one was abseiling from the roof. Yeah, so he'd been on the ground floor room. He said, quick, someone was spying on me and my wife while we were having sex. So Keith went, oh. And if Keith's watching this, that's a really good impression of Keith. Oh.
That's like the farmer out of Shaun the Sheep. That's all he does. He goes,
So Keith was like, oh, right, okay, let me start taking some details. And Keith got to the bit where he said, and obviously this story is all recounted to me. I wasn't here to deal with this bit. Anyway, and it was a long time ago, so forgive me, Keith, if I don't think I've embellished it, but
I hope you have.
Anyway, so Keith got to the point where he said, what did he look like? And at that moment, the night manager, Keith was the deputy, the night manager comes round the corner and the guest turns to him and said, it was him. He was staring through my window. Now, the reason this is so important is the night manager himself, he was quite distinctive. He looked like Mr. Thompson and Mr. Thompson from Tintin.
You what?
Are you too young for that as well?
I'm too young for that.
If anyone knows Mr. Thompson, I'll show you Mr. Thompson and Mr. Thompson afterwards.
Yeah.
But he's very distinctive looking.
Okay.
So he said it was him. He was staring through our window. So Keith was like, oh. Anyway, the next day, obviously, all of this came out, and I had to suspend this chap when he came back in. We'd sort of done preliminary investigations, and we suspended him. What had happened was, and we were able to corroborate this with key checks and everything. So, and actually, it turned out that half the night team knew. Poor Keith didn't, but half the night team knew that what this guy was doing over the years was he'd come in on his shift at 10:30, check any guests still left to check in, and anyone who's on the ground floor, he'd go on his patrols, start his shift, he'd go into the bedroom, he'd make sure the curtains were drawn but open about this much, and then wait for them to check in, and then he'd go on a patrol around the outside and be staring at them in the window. And that's what he was doing.
That is horrific.
But what we then found out afterwards was that him and this other guy, there was another guy, let's call him John. His name's not John, but let's call him John.
I got the gist of that.
They used to go and wait outside guest bedroom doors listening to them having sex.
Why?
And then the other thing we found out afterwards was, so this is in the early noughties, okay, so video was still a thing.
Spice Girls. These are all the things that were good. Spice Girls, Britney Spears, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Five.
Boyzone even was still around. Anyway.
Yeah, keep going.
So, and actually, well, I can't say, there's a
John.
story about Roland Keating that I can't say on Knife because...
Stop teasing us.
Anyway, so what was also happening, there's this John, who was the listening in with this guy.
Weird.
So basically, we have pay-per-view videos, right? And so if anyone's ever stayed in a hotel, right, you have different channels, and now it's just all digital. Whereas before, what would happen is, say Monday was Jurassic Park and Tuesday was Back to the Future, the early receptionist had to go in and change the videos over, swap the videos in the cassette players, right, at the back of reception. But obviously channel 32 and 34 were porn channels. So every day there was a different porn video that went in and the other one went in the box. And at the end of the month, the box got sent away and a new box came. This John, on the days that Frankie does tennis or whatever it was not on, it went back in the box. And this John was running a rental on the videos. And all he was doing was making sure the videos ended up back in the box for the day.
What a savvy businessman!
Yes, so he was renting the porn videos.
Oh, the porn, only the porn.
Only the porn, not Jurassic Park and Back to the Future.
That's probably savvier, I guess.
So he was renting them because there was staff accommodation in this place as well.
Oh wow! So he was renting them out to the staff.
He was renting them out to the staff.
That is like the best heist ever.
Anyway, so there's more than one pervert.
Okay, well that was quite scary. I watched something on Instagram the other day and it was a woman on a cruise. I've got to send you the reel. And it's all the things she does when she's on a cruise to lock her door at night. And everything she put on her door was like ridiculous. Like it got to the point where she literally may as well have just taken the sink out and just put it against the door.
Yes.
But it does make you think because you're like, what's the thing? If you push a mirror, you can tell whether it's double-sided.
I always close the peephole thingy because I'm never convinced that it's the right way round. I always think they can see in as much as...
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
And I never want a room with an internet connecting door.
Yeah, that's weird. That reminds me of Scooby-Doo.
Oh, I don't...
Scooby-Doo kind of shit where people just pop out. It's like,
yeah. And I never have a ground floor room.
Do you not?
Well... Not after the...
Yeah, no, not after that.
So I'd always request a high floor. Always request a high floor.
Yeah. Okay.
Safest.
Well, now people have got some things to worry about when they go and stay away. This is what can happen. I want that to be implanted in your mind. Okay, we have probably enough time for one more. So you've got either the turkeys at Christmas or the lettuce and the punch.
Well, the turkeys at Christmas is a bit boring really in comparison. We can do the lettuce and the punch.
Sure,
but we've got to hang on, we've got time for the poo story.
Oh. Is it about you cleaning up poo?
Well, that'll spoil it.
But why when I've explicitly said we're not telling that story, have you now just weaseled it in?
Because it's very pivotal, because it was what made me decide to go into HR.
Okay, then. Go on then.
So we've
an
only got...
empowering story, clearly.
So you don't want to hear the lettuce and the punch?
Just go on with the poo, will you?
Right, okay.
Just go on with the poo.
So
you started and so you will finish.
After I worked in hotels, I had a bit of a midlife crisis and I left. I was like, I'd rather go and work in a pub than work here.
Weird.
And
I never want to work in a pub.
So I went and worked in this pub. And it was a good, decent pub. Like, it was a foodie pub. It was gastropub, so provenance of food. Like, it was a decent pub. Like, you'd go there if you wanted a nice meal.
Well, clearly not if this is the premise of the story.
And our boss there, let's call him Jamie. His name's not Jamie, but let's call him Jamie.
You don't have to keep saying his name's not Jamie. The way that you're going, fake name, that's enough for us.
Let's call him Jamie. So this Jamie, it turns out, no, Keith was real.
No.
So let's call him Jamie, and turns out he had a bit of a drink and drug problem. Okay. Like, before evening service, he'd go and have a pint and a line, and he was very erratic, and it wasn't a good place to be in terms of a workplace. But back then, it was before I worked in HR, I didn't know any better, right? I didn't sort of really twig that was really terrible in itself. Anyway, one Sunday night, I was working on the shift, and he was off. It was his birthday. And he was drinking with some of the regulars.
Wait, so he came into his place of work to drink? without his mates. He came in to socialise with the regulars.
Yeah, because they were his mates, and it all was going wrong because he
That's
tried to come on to one of the regulars' wives, and there was a bit
terrible.
So it was already a lively Sunday evening.
It's already starting the beginnings of chlamydia in the queue.
He probably had that too, to be fair. Anyway, and like he'd lost his licence for drink driving. He was just a bit of a mess up. Anyway, and at the end of the night, he'd fallen asleep on this velvet velour bench. Velvet velour is important to the story, right? He'd fallen asleep. So I'd gone, okay, fine. Well, he's got keys. It's his pub. I'll lock up. I won't set the alarm, and I'll come in the next day and see. Anyway, so I locked up, left him there asleep. Next day, I come in, and I go, smells funny in here. Jamie wasn't there, but the pub smelt. Anyway, went down to where this velvet velour bench was.
No.
And it's clear there'd been a commotion because the picture was off the wall and there was glass all over the floor. And it basically, cut a long story short, it was clear there was poo everywhere and someone had attempted to clean it up.
Okay, how does that explain the commotion of the painting?
Well, I think what had happened is he'd woken up, gone, oh shit, I need a poo, and knocked the frame off or something. Yeah. So there was glass all over with this poo on the floor. Anyway.
Okay.
So we had to open at 9:30.
Some savvy detective skills from you there.
We had to open at 9:30. So I got one of the kitchen porters to help me take this velvet velour bench out the back.
But also it's shitty.
Yeah, it's shitty. All this velvet velour shit in there. Anyway. So
you can't get that out anyway.
Well, hold that thought. Anyway, so when I came back, cleared up it still stank. I was like, it still stinks in here. Do you know what the bugger had done? He cleared up his poo, but then gone and put it in a bin without a bin liner.
No.
So then I had to take the bin out, hose all of that down. Anyway, blah, 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 Febreze.
That is definitely, that is being absolutely rat-arsed and waking up still rat-arsed.
Yes, but also pity a thought for the taxi driver who must have taken him home because his trousers must not have been in a good way. Anyway, open the pub, blah, blah, blah. And then the kitchen porter, you know those old upholstery cleaners that you get for your cars? The kitchen porter had one of them. So I was there trying to get the poo out of the velvet velour bench. In the end...
Was it some sort of family heirloom or had it been passed down?
No, but without the belt, but it looked really obvious it was missing in the pub because it was in a part of the pub that needed this velvet velour bench. Anyway, he came in a bit later and we condemned that velvet velour bench like it never came back in. Like we had to condemn it.
It's seen things that it can't unsee.
And he apologised and actually all I got for it was an apology and he paid for me and my mum to have lunch. That was it. But if I'd have known then what I know now, I would have reacted very differently.
What would you have done now, being in HR? Because I think the immediate response is I'm going to put in a grievance. But there clearly was no HR support.
No.
A grievance doesn't really get you anywhere because it's already happened. You can't really change things that have happened in the past. So what would you have done, knowing what you know now?
I think also the other thing to say is my service wasn't very long. If it had been and there were people there that worked a long time, they were being constructively dismissed in his behaviour because his behaviour, there was another time when he punched a wall because the chef wouldn't make a mistake in the middle of Sunday lunch service, for example. And he punched a wall and put a hole in it. So he was constructively dismissing other people. So I didn't have the service for that to happen.
Yeah.
I wish that I'd known more because I think it would have been, I probably either would have raised a grievance or I would have gone higher. I would have, in effect, whistleblown, although it probably doesn't reach the threshold for what a technical whistleblower is. But I would have probably gone higher and been like, this is happening. And because it was in a small chain, I'd have gone higher and said, this is what's happening in this pub. This is not okay. And I think you have to, same with hotels, you accept, well, I don't think people accept it these days, but back then you did expect a certain amount of...
I agree.
...of that kind of behaviour in terms of it wasn't unusual for somebody to come into work still hungover from the night before and drunk. It wouldn't be unusual for someone to drink on duty, even though not on my shift, but... It's not unusual.
But I agree with that. I mean, I worked in hospitality for years when I was at uni. I did catering at weddings. That was actually better when the catering staff were coming in. But if you were actually, I mean, I was in a 5-star hotel, the same as
Yeah.
you were. And the stuff that I saw there was like, it was so eye-opening. And it'd be small things that would never happen now, you know, like one of the chefs would slap your ass on the way through and it would be like, oh,
Yeah.
things like that. I mean, that was probably like 15 years ago, but that is what it used to be like. And it was
Absolutely.
normal, and you wouldn't say anything to people because your manager would be standing there when things like this would be happening, and it was just
Yes.
normal. It was like, oh, okay, well, she's got the attention on her now, at least it's not me.
Absolutely. And also there's, especially like in kitchens, pouring gravy down a chef's pants, things like that.
Ooh.
Just
That couldn't be good for you not liking baked beans. How do you feel about gravy? Do you feel good
I'm
about
okay
gravy?
about gravy, just
Okay.
not the baked beans. But anyway, so there's a certain amount of, and going back to what you said at the very beginning about being in HR and about being desensitized to things.
Yeah.
Again, if you work in a particular industry, it's the same with, I don't know, people who work on a building site. They're probably desensitized to swearing and to a lot of things that go on, whereas actually in outside of that, it's not acceptable. You
Yeah.
become desensitized to it. And so I think that there's a certain amount of
so
that, but at
true.
the same time, his behaviour was absolutely not acceptable. You need to feel safe when you're at work, but also in the end, I remember sitting talking to him because there was a whole other hoo-ha once, and I basically said, I don't come here to work in a teenager's party. Like, that's how it felt to me. I was like, I'm not working in a teenager's party, and you're older than me, mate. Like, what are you doing? I think he was having some kind of life crisis. Anyway, that's the poo story. But as a result of that, I quit the pub, and I decided at that point I want to work in HR, and I quit the pub, moved back in with my mum in order to be able to pay for my CIPD level 5 qualification. And then I got my first job in HR for like, my salary was like 20 grand a year. And so I had to obviously live with my mum in order to be able to do
Started
that.
at the bottom, now we're here.
Yeah, and then the rest is history. So it was that poo story that was the catalyst for me deciding to work in HR, which is why it's important.
Yeah, but also really gross.
It's really gross. I still remember this poo on the velvet. I can't look at a green velvet bench ever in the same way.
Was it green velvet, like an
It was
emerald?
it was a bit darker than this.
Oh,
Much darker.
dear.
Like that wall.
Like this, maybe?
Yeah, like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now I can never unsee that, can I? Cool. Great. So, there we are. HR Horrors with Sarah May from Mayday HR. Thank you so much for listening. And Sarah, thank you for coming on.
You're very welcome.
And we will next up have some recruitment stories for the next episode. But what I will do is put the full transcript in everything. So please follow, please rate it, please like, share, do all that good stuff. It'll be on YouTube and Spotify. And thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Bye.